Tiani, who's a governance expert, and we have talked a lot about the Nairobi County, but let's diversify, shall we? Now let's look at what has happened this week. The biggest news has been the KCPE results. Let's start from there. What's your take on all the news that came out this week regarding how they performed, whether the teachers were being overworked? There's so much that came out from how this was handled and obviously made the headlines throughout the week. What's your take on it, Maga?
First and foremost, congratulations to those who did well. For those who didn't, that is not the end of it, as you can see. You still have a chance to become the governor.
Wow.
So all is not lost.
Wow.
I would like to congratulate the schools and the teachers as well. My main concern, though, is the place of public primary schools. At some point, Olympic Primary was the pride of this city and this nation. And it is a public school. In this city, there are many public schools which take in so many students and hold the future and the fate of these students in their hands. I think it is a high time the national government relooks at free primary education and make sure that we make free primary education work. If it did, like, I was in a primary school somewhere in Kariobangi called Valley Bridge Primary School. And one of our neighboring schools was Babadogo. Babadogo takes in almost 4,000 students from the slums. Thankfully, it is sponsored by Chandaria, who's been graceful enough to sponsor so many students there. But Babadogo holds the fate of so many kids from slums. If we were to make such a school work, if we were to make it work, believe me, we would brighten the future of so many young ones in this country. And it's not only that particular school, there are so many other public schools. It is a high time we go back to the place where being in a private school was laughable. Back in our days, going to a private high school was laughable.
Yes, actually.
You had to find your place either in a provincial or a national school that is public. Right now, it's the other way around. If you're going to a public school, you are the laughingstock in the village.
Ruth?
For me, 3 takers. Number 1 is congratulations to my alumni, Rongo Success Academy. The school recorded a mean score of 388.
Wow.
382 from 376 last year, with the top student getting 425 marks, and the least getting 323 marks, and there were over 40 students in the school. Wonderful school.
Nobody with one.
Okay.
There was nothing below 325. We did not have anyone below 325, and I think the director, Mr. Eliud Kondeo, who's now a very old man, and I'm sure Osiani knows him, a very good friend. Tuma salamu. No. I think one thing that he did for us, and I hope all primary schools would do, is help you discover yourself at a very young age. I think for him, and maybe I see other principals also doing it in other schools, is that he embraced the whole CBC before it came, because by the time I was in class 2, by the time I was in class 3, I was already doing public speaking up to the national level. I was already engaging in drama. I was already doing poetry, things that exposed me to I discovered that I wanted to do law by the time I was in class 4. I knew I started seeing the political side in me by the time I was getting to class 6. I already embraced leadership by the time from the time I entered the school. And he is also, and he also offered an opportunity to people from needy backgrounds, because I remember I was one of the students who would always not pay school fees but still go to school. And for me, I say why that is my point number 1 is our education system helping young kids from the time they're in primary school begin to know what they want and who they are, and as a result know that by the time the results are coming out, these results are not going to determine who I will become in life, what I will be in life, so that I start complaining. Because the other day I was seated with a daughter of a friend, a very close friend of mine, and a senior, former senator, and the daughter had actually done very well, but because there's the whole landmark that you have to get 400 marks and above to go to the whole mentality that primary school is only to prepare you for a good national school, rather than to prepare you to become a wholesome individual who knows who they are and what they want out of life at a very early age. The other thing I want to commend is the street child who got, was it 360 something marks? Yeah, there's a street kid who actually got 360 something marks. And this should make us begin to look at education as a wholesome, education as a right that should be granted to everybody, whether you're on the streets, whether you are in the prison, because your circumstances, as I always say, should not determine who you eventually become. Yesterday, and remarkably, I have to bring this up, yesterday we were at an investment forum in Nairobi by the Somaliland Embassy. And one of the things that kept on coming up is the fact that there's need for countries to begin investing in the education of the young people, because ultimately, as we are talking about infrastructural development, because the investment forum was about mining, infrastructure. So as we are talking about developing our infrastructure, even as Kenya, as Somaliland, I think that was the agenda. As we are talking about investment, these kids are the ones who will ultimately get into investment, infrastructure, mining, innovation, and
they'll
they
be
need to
handling
invest.
what you've already set up.
Yes, there is need to invest in their education and begin to drive them towards that direction when they are still in primary school. And I think finally there was the whole general conversation that the youth still don't know how to deal with failure. We heard of a kid who committed suicide because he got 170 marks. Are we training our generation to learn how to deal with failure? That if you do not get what you expect out of life, can you quickly bounce and look at life in the future and look at the fact that tomorrow is going to be a better day? Let's train, because from the time you're in primary school, class 1 to class 8, for 8 years of your life, your parents are constantly grilling in you that you have to pass, you have to get 400 marks, you have to go to a good school. And so they don't tell you, what if you do not get those marks? Because today we see, forget about the Sonkos who failed in primary school and high school generally and still became leaders. Look at global leaders who failed several times, people who are told to repeat over and over again. Global examples of people who have eventually made it to world leaders that are admired, innovators that are now being celebrated and did not do well academically. So let's teach and train our kids that there is life beyond not getting what you want out of life.
Not getting 400 and above. David?
I am glad that Ruth is a product of my village. And that the gentleman is talked about, she has spoken about, Mr. Eliud Kondeo is a distinguished human. He was an educationist, he was an education officer of many years. And he decided to start a private school. Of course, I understand and we'll talk about the need for quality education in public schools. But he founded a private school.
Started as a mabati.
But I tell you that it is the desire in the man. For him, it wasn't about the money entirely. A bit of it was about the money. Because the guy has ensured that brilliant kids have gone through that school without having to pay even fees sometimes. Now that makes sense. The Chandarias of this world who have gone into institutions where people are unable to help themselves, like Baba Dogo, and many others. I have a lot of respect for Chandaria, for seeing that there is a need out here and helping without wanting a political office. Just out of the desire. Wacha hii ya kuleta maji na kupeleka bodies nyumbani because you want a vote. He has seen, go to most hospitals, private and public, there has been an investment by the Chandarias of this world. So congratulations to all the students across the country who did well. Well here is based on many things. The child who has not had the ability to even have, who was not able to afford a meal, had one meal in 5 days as they went to school and trekked 6 kilometers to school. If that child gets 190 marks, that child has done well.
True.
Well here must be put into context. The Nairobian child who belongs to an average family, who is capable and who is driven to school and has bacon and gets 190 marks, that child has not done well.
True.
Because he has had the opportunity but has not been able to translate that opportunity into something good for themselves. Do not vilify these kids. But I also want to proudly tell you that that's not the end of life. There are people who didn't begin too well and ended up greatly. In fact, Most of the people who have ended up being the stellar students at the end of high school were kids who were average when they did their primary school, or even the university.
Very true.
We left the university, and I tell you, we would get kids who came from schools that no one knew and had B+, knocking off the Alliance kids with their A-planes as we graduated.
Oh, yes.
You see, the tragedy is people go to private schools in primary so that they can go to public schools in secondary.
Yeah.
That speaks to the need for quality education.
Yes.
The free primary education has to be quality. The quality of education has to be fantastic. We have to agree that whereas it is free, it must not be useless.
Yes.
It has to be free, but it has to be good. The quality of education must be just like hospitals in this country. I tell you, when you go to London, remember in this show last week I said, all these leaders who fly out of Kenya to go to all these other hospitals, go to public hospitals in those countries.
Absolutely.
And they can't make the quality of hospitals in London. The public hospitals are the go-to hospitals.
Yes,
when you say I'm going to a private hospital, guys know that you're poor.
What's going on with you?
No, people know that you really need help. Yes. Mugabe went to die in Singapore in a public hospital.
True.
Kibaki got an accident that couldn't be managed in Kenya and went to London, you know, because he went to a public hospital. The quality of education in our country must catch up with the global standards. But in so doing, we have to ensure, the only way it will get there is by ensuring that we have quality, free primary education. But lastly, I am so proud of Magoha and team, the work that Matiang'i began. You know, when you start fighting corruption, it fights back. Schools will burn, parents will be up in arms because they can't buy exams for their kids. Now, every Kenyan is proud. Look at our moment of pride when not a single child has the results cancelled.
Absolutely.
Because we were able to deal with that small aspect of education. Education is massive. Exams is just a small aspect of it. To have heard that not a single child missed their results because of cheating for me was the climax of it all.
It's amazing.
It's what happens when we concert our efforts together to deal with these monsters. In the end, it pays.
And if anyone is wondering what delivery is for a ministry, that is delivery.
15 days
Absolutely.
I know.
17 days.
17 days after, wow.
And speaking of the education sector, HELB has been an issue that a lot we were told that people are going to be named and shamed.
Probably we have culprits
I was speaking to a lawyer, and he said he's just hoping that he has changed enough so that when the picture comes out, he looks different.
You know, a good photo.
Philip, what's your take on that?
I just hope that they don't use my ID photo.
Oh my God.
You know, the person who took my photo was so short, so my nose looks really big in that particular photo. But I think it's a high time we looked at the university education. In other countries, it's free. There's no need of having 100% free primary education, 100% transition, high school education. Then you leave these people to hang about after they have cleared for tier. And fees is a big issue. You know, coming to Nairobi or any other, going to any other university in any city, away from your home, you'll have to pay for accommodation, you'll need food, and of course, you need to pay tuition fees.
Textbooks.
Therefore, it is a high time we looked at the financing of universities. Universities should not be run like businesses. Our vice chancellors are being forced to run universities like businesses. And the only way they can raise money is through charging graduation fees, through hiring out gowns and such like activities. Yes, giving people retakes and, you know, charging them for the retakes as well. They should be institutions of research, generation of knowledge, and impacting of knowledge in general. If you look at Oxford, for example, those who it is the money that was stolen from Zimbabwe by Cecil Rhodes that was used to set up a trust that to date runs Oxford, and students can go there and study tuition free. If you look at the agendas in the upcoming general election in the UK, one of Labour policies is that they will scrap tuition fees from let me just use the word pre-school education all the way to university.
Yes.
Education is an equalizer. Education, as per the United Nations Declarations on Human Rights, should be universal and free and accessible to all. It is a high time we achieved that. That said, though, you know, help went a long way in helping some of us go through university.
It did, yes.
Live a comfortable and respectable life and come out and be who we are today.
Yeah.
And those who are coming after us, should the tuition at their time not be free, would need it in order to access education as well. So it behoves us to pay our debt.
Yeah.
We should pay it not just out of duty. We should do it willingly and with a lot of willingness.
Determination.
Again, we shouldn't, in fact, it shouldn't just stop there. For those of us who are doing well, and hopefully I will be doing well at some point, I should be able to give back, like Osiani gave the example of Manu Chandaria. We should be able to sponsor students. We should be able to contribute back to help more than we received. And it is the same with the corporate world.
Right.
Let us help these students. Tomorrow, they are the ones who will build our economy, and it goes around in a circle. You build me, I build you, and we build the republic.
Yes, so because hopefully most of the defaulters, whether or not you are able to, because for some actually they just cannot, they haven't found jobs, they cannot pay it back, but there's some who are literally just choosing not to pay. Yeah, so one day
especially
they will have...
the ones from the 70s.
Yeah, we'll have,
I mean, what's
going on? Yeah, they will have kids of age who would also benefit from such a project. So they should keep it running by paying, at the risk of sounding like the devil's advocate. Ruth?
Well, I'm one of the very few lucky individuals who have never filled in a help form, not as not by virtue of being able to afford university education, but by also the blessing that I managed to secure a full scholarship from Strathmore University, a need-based full scholarship to study law. And I'm grateful for that because, I mean, I'm who I am today as a result of that. But generally speaking, what's the value of education? What should be the output of education? The output of education is to nurture you to become an independent citizen who, even when there is no jobs within the market, then you're self-sufficient enough to be innovative, to think about creating your own jobs and even employing other people as a result. Right. But one thing that our government has failed, and we have to acknowledge, is that it has failed in creating jobs. I remember when the Jubilee administration took over, one of the promises that the president said was that he was going to create, was it 800,000 jobs in a year or 500,000 in a year? Where are these jobs and who has been absorbed into these jobs? It is one thing to even have evidence. Okay, assuming they are there because I do not see them. And in fact, one of the ladies who has been gracing our show, Nerima Wako, is doing something about it. Siasa Place, I've seen they are starting a petition where they're calling upon young people to drop their CVs and drop them, is it at Harambee House or something, to just highlight the problem, the fact that you will see skilled young people.
Imagine the piles.
Exactly. I'm going to submit my CV because I don't consider myself as a fully employed, citizen. One of the things, the questions we should ask ourselves is, what should be the output of university, college, or tertiary education? Should it just be, should the government just provide jobs? Or should we now begin having a bigger conversation about what kind of jobs is the government, delivering? It could say, fine, we created 500,000 jobs, but what kind of jobs are they? Is it garbage collection jobs within Nairobi City Council? Is it, is it hawking jobs? Is it jobs that I, as a graduate of law school, can actually find an opportunity for myself without having to now go to extreme lengths to do? Because, the other day we saw the story, and I'm sure you saw it as a lawyer, you must have seen it, of a young law student who, actually there are many, like 3 lately this year, of one who is a night guard at night and studies during the day, and still has a family to take care of, still has his own, siblings to take care of. There was another one of a law student who is a mkokoteni rider during his part-time to raise his school fees. What is the output of education? When we are talking about jobs, what are the quality of these jobs we are talking about? How much much are the young people earning from the jobs we are talking about?
Absolutely.
Because you cannot tell me that I have invested, for instance, Strathmore University's school fees is almost 1.5 million shillings for law school. Then I get out of law school and I'm earning a salary of 15,000 shillings. Rent in Nairobi, basic servant quarters in Nairobi does not cost now less than 15,000 shillings.
Yes.
So I'm basically earning 15,000 shillings and I'm supposed to be paying rent for myself. And most people who come to Nairobi to either study or to look for job opportunities.
Absolutely.
So you're studying, meaning you don't even have relatives in Nairobi who can host you. Hostels are very limited.
And if you do they want to anyway?
You know, there's no affordable housing. So
already.
when you're earning this 20,000 shillings, can you take care of your rent? Can you take care of your food, as well as take care of your transport costs to even go to work?
Right.
And that's where you find a lot of young people getting depressed. But over and above, generally speaking, if you have been given the privilege of accessing HELB loan, there are so many people coming behind who need to access these loans.
Yes.
For instance, my brother is now in university and is one of the people who are really trying to apply for HELB so that he can be able to successfully finish school. If you're privileged enough to go to the job market and earning a good salary that can ensure that you can pay back part of the loan, please do it. Because at the end of the day, when we are complaining about our country being unable to pay back the debt that the country owes, and yet you yourself are not paying back the debts that you owe the government, then you know you are a reflection again. We become a reflection of our leadership because we are doing what we are condemning. And generally speaking, I believe that we, as a country, education is not one of the most expensive things that would lead. I know it is expensive, but I believe that, I mean, if we look at the money that is lost to corruption, when you hear of the Ministry of Health losing 63 billion shillings, you know, all these scandals, if this money can be invested into education, we could actually have free education from primary to university.
Absolutely. And the problem with student loans is not unique to Kenya.
Yeah,
even the United
in the
States has a whole, it's sort of
and we are seeing
presidential,
presidential candidates campaigning on it.
On those,
as you know, like Elizabeth Warren is saying she's going to scrap off all student loans.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a need, and it's something that we need to figure out. So at the end of the day, we're not the only country that's struggling to figure out how to deal with it. But is it a situation where we should have an education system that churns out minds that are not just waiting for Gava to bring
I want us to put things into context and to be honest with ourselves and with Kenyans. The school fee, the loan advanced to university students is equivalent to the high school fees in this country. Annual high school fees is what university fees is. To entirely say that all people can't pay it is to be dishonest. But also, we need to be alive to the fact that the struggle for jobs
is real
after college is real. I have met friends of mine who after university got scholarships to go to the best schools in the world, who were my classmates, and cannot get decent jobs. The problem with the Kenyan context of education has also largely been, which is now being addressed by CBC, is that our education system has for years prepared people for employment instead of arming them with critical thinking skills that would help generate jobs. Now, the situation here is such that it is true you have a whole lot that is that genuinely may be unable to raise this money.
That is true.
In fact, when Ruth says that the single room, the least expensive is 15,000, I tell Ruth she hasn't lived in Nairobi. For 1,500 shillings, people who are graduates have to live in some of these shanties. And it is painful. Because they were the hope of their families when they went to school. Our parents did not have investment plans. They were not taught about investment. For them, their investment plan for old age, their retirement package was, my child is in school, so when I retire, my child will take care of me. I saw in Tanzania a member of parliament saying, it cannot be business as usual where if a parent doesn't take the child to school, the parent has to be even thrown to jail for being irresponsible. Yet when children don't take care of their parents in old age, they are left to roam the cities around. They should also be jailed. Now, those of us who are able, I remember I was a beneficiary of HELB. And when I got my first contract, I rushed to pay it one-off. Driven by responsibility and the desire to extend that favor to another child. Never mind, hell would later still send me a reminder to pay my loan, yet I have a certificate. So I put on my Facebook that I can't wait for my picture to be published. Then I sue them like God knows what and hire Magal to sue them for defamation. Because their whole whatever doesn't seem to be working. But I said, those who are able, because there are those who are able, please. There is a child who comes from a disadvantaged family who genuinely needs that amount. In terms of policy, I cannot wait for us to get to the point where Israel or Germany is, where education is free from nursery to university. If you want to read up to PhD, it's free. These institutions and these countries that have done well with their free education, quality education, just did one thing. They ensured that the quality of their education was matchless. That the quality was up tip-top. So now when you go to these countries, it is the international students who want quality education that go there to pay an arm, a leg, and 4 kidneys. And that keeps them going. Oxford. If you go to Oxford, if you, as a Kenyan, goes to Oxford to study, you will part with 5 million shillings worth of fee for a master's course. Okay? Because they know that they have done so well with their quality of education, you will all troop to it. You will all want to be like David D, who is a graduate of Oxford. And so parents pay. Kenyan parents who have refused to pay help are teaching their kids at 3.2 million in these schools outside the country. How irresponsible does that get? Those ones need to be jailed. But I look forward to changing our policies. I just do not want us to have free education. I want us to have quality education, right from primary. And if we cannot demonstrate that at our primary level, I shudder to imagine what quality of education is going to be at the university level. And so I really hope that we will advance to that level where, as Magala's indicated, if the transition from primary to secondary, we are working to get 100% transition. What do you want people to do post-secondary school?
After that.
So you need to instill in kids that, you know, education, university is free. Just get C+, and you're in. Or get a B+, and you're in. Globally, C+ is a university, you know, entry grade.
And people are proud.
And people are proud of it.
When they get it,
And so if we are unable to figure out what to do, then you have educated people without jobs, a bit brilliant than the uneducated. Then you'll have a crisis. Then you have university education. There's no transition into jobs. There's no assurance of that. Partly, if you go to most of Nyanza, people have 20 acres of land in Luo Nyanza, but they buy motorbike. Because they think, you know, the easy way, there's 300 coming every day or 1,000 every day. Why? Because we have failed to demonstrate to them that agriculture can actually generate decent livelihoods.
That's it.
We went to school teaching kids throughout, get a master's, get an MBA so that you can get promotion at work. Not get an MBA or your degree so that you can able to solve the problems of the society by bringing innovation or innovating a thing or two and generating solutions that while you generate those solutions, you will make money for yourself. Okay? So if people don't get the jobs they want and they studied agricultural services and extension and have a degree, and they don't get the job they want, they resolve to coming to town and to demonstrate to us pitifully how they cannot make ends meet. Yet their fathers in the village have 5 acres where with a bit of assistance, they're able to become millionaires of their own rights. Now, this has been the problem of our country, but gladly it's being resolved. So I long for the day when we will have free university education. I understand, I was a SONU president, so I know. I had kids who would come to school and I would see my fellow students who couldn't make it. Some were coming to university for the first time and the only amount they arrived with in town was a balance of 20 shillings off the transport that brought them to the city.
Right.
I lived with them in my hostel, in my room. My room had, at some point, 11 students living in it.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't afford. When people were going home for holiday, they couldn't afford the luxury of transport.
Wow.
So some of these things are real. Yet I also know that there are people who were able and still got help.
Right.
Kenyans who are of that nature, please, be fair to the others. That's the only way we are going to, the country is able to consider that there are people who are going through hell.
Absolutely.
Be responsible if you can manage to pay your 150,000 staggered over 5 years.
Yes.
Make a commitment.
And just do it.
It is just honorable.
Now, we're left with 2 topics and 10 minutes, so let's be measured. We have Amos Wako and Sagana.
No, that can't. Let that take 10 minutes.
Okay, and the Sagana meeting, so I'll allow you to choose what you'd like to talk to. You know what it's all about. Amos Wako was named and shamed by the United States as having been corrupt.
Before I move on to that, I'd just like to clarify, I don't know whether it's joining issue with my friend David or just make a clarification.
Yeah, briefly, please.
Please try farming, then you'll know what farmers really go through. You know, our government has really let the farmer down.
It's true.
I remember after getting my first job, I took a loan of $1 million shillings and pumped it into maize farming in Kitale.
Project,
that was in 2008 when the coalition government took office, and maize at that time was selling at, they were buying maize at 3,500. I made a killing the first year. Come the second year, I plowed all my money back into that farm. And I'm telling you, the next year they were buying maize at 1,600.
It's true.
I lost almost 2/3 of that money.
Wow.
By my 3rd year of farming, I walked away. I just told my father, harvest that maize and do whatever you eat, you'll do with it. So farming, unless the government,
it's literally a gamble.
Unless the government changed the policy.
Exactly.
You know, it is the backbone of our economy.
Yeah.
And you know, we are talking of cash crunch. We're talking of our economy being in the doldrums. It is so easy. Just take care of the farmer, and you'll have taken care of this nation. Now, about Amos Wako, you know, two tragedies folded into one. You know, it points to the type of the criminal justice system that we do have in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, this man is walking free, yet he's been condemned in another country. At another level is the actions taken by the U.S. To me, that is a slap.
To what? And to what?
Yes,
what's that going to do? That's a question I've been
in our
asking.
face. They should have done this while he was the Attorney General.
Yes.
I mean, right now, I don't even know that he's a senator, though I'm told he's a senator. I mean, to what end? For what purpose?
Exactly.
And again, U.S. really is not the country to lecture on matters corruption. Okay. You can see what is coming out of the Trump impeachment inquiry and how they have meddled with Ukraine affairs. Trump was basically bribing the Ukrainian president to investigate a corruption.
$400 million.
Yes, a corruption deal by the vice president of the United States. And from what I gathered from the inquiry, one of the ambassadors was actually saying that, you know, the U.S. determines who is to be charged and who is not to be charged, depending on whether or not they are favorable to the U.S. foreign policies.
It has to do with their interests.
Yes, it has to do with their interests.
We're running out of time.
Yes, so much. I wonder what foreign interests they're trying to push with publishing Wako's name. I don't know whether they are trying to discredit the BBI or something.
Briefly.
Mine, I think I want to take a different angle to it in the sense that well, the U.S. might not be the best example of a corrupt-free nation, but the fact that they can go after someone almost 30 years after 10 years after he left active, his position that he's now being indicted for, is evidence that, you know, corruption will fight back eventually. Yeah. It will fight back eventually, and that you involved in corruption at the moment thinking you'll get away with it. And it should set precedent for our own country, that it should, well, we might not agree with them, we might not agree with them coming right now, but it should open our eyes at the moment that we need to probably go back to our history books and find out who has been, who is literally getting away with corruption right now? Yes. Who had amassed it? It's all in the name of equity and equitable remedies to accessing justice. Absolutely. Going back, David, and getting back land that was grabbed, getting back properties and assets that was recovered, and I believe the government should begin to embark on the same as well.
Okay, David, briefly.
Resolving the unemployment issue for our educated kids and students will have to be multi-pronged. The policy approach has to be broad. When you broaden the policy approach, that is when you will even put emphasis on agriculture and other alternatives of employment.
Sure.
That said, the bar set for fighting corruption must not be lowered for some. The bar set for Babayao must be the bar set for Sonko, must be the bar set for Kiunjuri, must be the bar set for Wako. The bar has to remain. We must decide that if we are going to say we are fighting corruption, then we fight it. Granted, there are people who will unfairly be grabbed into it, but we must be looking like we really want to deal with the issues. So it's unfortunate that this is what has caught up with Amos Wako. Remember, he sits at the pinnacle of the country at the moment, which is the BBI team, trying to forge a future that is corruption-free. Out of that alone, I think Amos should have resigned and said, I think I am honest. I think I'm guiltless. But because this has caught up with me, I don't want to muddy the goings-on with BBI. I bet I will recuse myself from the process of the BBI until we have clarity on this issue. Meanwhile, I call the US to avail what they think is evidence against me. That's what honorable people do. We expect that of every leader who finds himself in that situation, not because they are all guilty. You may be innocent, but it only demonstrates that you are a cut above others, that you love the country so much, and you're committed to the principles of the country. As the BBI, one of the core mandates of the BBI is to find a way of dealing with corruption. So if you're mentioned at that level, and banned accessing a country,
it's only right.
Of course, I hate it that we have to model our the measure of how corrupt or otherwise is the US. That for us to be an accredited airline, laughable. We are only accredited the day we can take a direct flight into. What a joke. That said, Amos should recuse himself from BBI. He may be innocent. Recuse yourself. Explain that I am recusing myself out of honor for this country, out of the spirit of the handshake, until this is resolved. However, I'll be here to be consulted. Okay,
let's take a short break. That has been the Week in Review with Philip Magal, Ruth Ambogo, and David Osiani, joining us every Friday to review the very heavy matters of the week. Thank you so much, gents and lady. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll have Celebrity Chat and some more here on Fun Day Friday Morning Express edition.